Good afternoon, everyone. I will open with a prayer, and once I've finished the prayer, could everyone just stay standing for a couple of seconds? Thank you. Lord, bless our gathering today. Guide our thoughts and our words. Guide us with wisdom in our decisions. Help us work together with purpose. May this meeting bear good fruit. Amen. Now, if we could do just a minute of silence in respect of Ivan Vanderwater. Ivan was a prominent Gore businessman who tragically passed away in a plane crash in Hawa on Sunday. So we'll just have a moment's silence. Thank you. Please be seated. Welcome everyone to April and another council meeting here today primarily for the long-term plan. Welcome to councillors, to media, staff and people in attendance. Thank you for taking time out of your afternoon to be here today. We are going to have a couple of council meetings coming up. So we obviously had one last week, having one this week, and we have another one next week. There's just a bit of work that we need to chew through. So it's great to see all of your attendance. I will look for apologies now. I'm seeing that Councillor Dixon isn't here.
Councillor Dixon is an apology. She's in Hokitika.
Thank you for that. An apology for Councillor Dixon. Anybody else? Looks like we're all here. Could I have a mover that apology be received? Councillor Stringer, seconded by Councillor Hovell. I will put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. And against, the motion is carried. Conflicts of interest? Appear to be none. There are no reports for information today and no public forum either. So we go right into the reports for decision, which is the approval of the long-term plan 2025 consultation document and supporting information for public consultation. I'm just going to rip into a quick intro and then I'll hand over to Debbie, who will do a bit more information, and then we'll pass over to Mike, who is from Audit and will give us a little bit more information on the audit process. And also welcome to Amanda, who's up at the top table doing minutes for us today, our new governance manager. So what lies in front of us today is some tough choices that we have to make about the Gore District's future. The long-term plan for 2025 to 2034 isn't just another bit of paperwork, it's about real decisions that will impact everyone's future of our district for the next 9 years. I'll be honest, as I'm sure many of the councillors around this table will be, last year's rate increase was hard. Hard for us to front, but even harder for our community to absorb. And yet, sadly, that still isn't enough. We're still running a deficit, putting off essential maintenance and not saving enough for asset replacement. And we simply can no longer operate this way. This consultation document lays out some hard facts. We need to invest $183 million over the next 9 years just to keep what we already have. Our bridges are becoming unsafe and our water networks are aging. These problems won't solve themselves. We have some difficult conversations to have. Some will say the proposed rate increase is too high, while others will say that we're taking on too much debt. And that's exactly why we need to hear from the public, as we need to talk to the community about the hard decisions we have to make so that we can all move forward together. This plan has no fancy projects, no wishful thinking. It's just about the basics, fixing our finances while keeping our essential services running. These options aren't easy. Do we take the pain with higher rates, or do we cut the services that we hold dear to our hearts to ease the burden? There is no perfect answer, but it is up to the council to present these choices clearly and let our community help us decide. So now, the question is to everyone who is watching, will we be willing to make the hard choices today for a better tomorrow? I believe we are. I believe our community will step up. I believe we can all be honest about what we are facing. I'll now pass on to Debbie to do a bit more of an introduction.
Good afternoon. We all knew this was going to be a tough LTP, a variety of reasons for that. It's a tough economic climate out there at the moment. People are doing it hard, and look, none of us like to deliver news that there are going to be rates increases during a time like this. We've also had to do additional work to review levels of service and explore what practically we could cut or what things we could stop doing, and that's created additional workload for both staff and for councillors as well. And I think the third thing is that it has been an incredibly truncated timeline for all involved for the development of this LTP. So doing an LTP in 6 months is incredibly ambitious, not just for staff but for councillors as well. It's hard to convey the enormous volume of information that has to be worked through behind the scenes and in front of the scenes for us to get to this point in time. So I would just like to thank both my council and my staff for the hours of dedication that it has taken to get us to this point. As unpalatable as the message is, people have worked really hard. Lots of evenings and time spent to bring these options out there. It is time now to hear from our community and their views about the way forward. So that's it from me. I'd just like to invite Mike Hawken, who's our Deloitte auditor, up to talk to you about the audit process, and then we'll be happy to take questions.
Thank you, Deb. Hi, councillors. Look, in terms of the audit process, we have fulfilled or completed the role that we're required to undertake in relation to the consultation document. Our role is to ensure that the consultation document and underlying information fairly represents the matters proposed for inclusion in the long-term plan. As Deb alluded to, there is an enormous amount of information that sits in behind the consultation document and ultimately the long-term plan. It's a huge undertaking both by management and our team to work through that. So we have completed that work and certainly appreciate the support from Deb and the wider team in getting to this point. I guess in terms of the consultation document itself, in the papers we have included our draft audit opinion on those consultation document. I should just point out that included in the audit opinion are a couple of matters that would be appropriate to note at the moment, and then happy to take questions as people refer to them. So consistent with the previous long-term plan, there was a qualification in that in relation to critical asset condition and age information. We have that same qualification in the current year. That's really in relation to understanding of underground assets in particular. Very difficult to get an accurate assessment of them and to evaluate when those assets will need replenishment, reinvestment and maintenance, given that they're difficult to evaluate. So there's been good progress by council in relation to understanding those critical assets, but there's still work to do in relation to that. So there's a qualification in relation to that particular item. We also have a qualification in there in relation to projected costs around the stormwater system in particular. There is a substantial spend over the life of the long-term plan, $43 million allocated to stormwater projects in particular. And at the moment, some of those projects have placeholder or estimates of cost as opposed to detailed workings and undertaking, which is not unusual or inconsistent with what we see at many councils, particularly given the 10-year horizon on the nature of these asset plans. And finally, there's just an emphasis of matter, again, consistent with all councils producing their reports at the moment in relation to the uncertainty associated with the Water Done Well reforms. The council's made the assumption, as appropriate, that the long-term plan reflects the ongoing management of the water infrastructure, and there will be a consultation that goes out in May 2025, separate to the consultation document produced here, which will give some insight as to where that might lead. But yeah, look, we've, subject to those matters, we've concluded our audit work and we're comfortable that the consultation document satisfies the requirements of the Act.
Thank you for that, Mike. Muchly appreciated. Councillors, questions for either Mike on the audit topic or Debbie on the consultation document? Councillor Stringer.
Thank you, through your worship. Thanks, Mike. The level of risk around the three waters and stuff, that's not just affecting us, is it? It's affecting everyone across the country at the moment.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. Yeah, and look, to be honest, the challenges that Gore faces are largely consistent with many councils. You know, the timing of your consultation document and planned LTP release, I guess, does put you in the middle of the process around what you are planning or going to do with water going forward. And that is a little bit different to councils who have now, or who have previously already delivered their long-term plan. They will pick that up as a separate amendment. You'll have to consider that as part of the finalisation of this LTP, which is a little bit different, but there are a number of councils in that particular position.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other questions? Councillor Hovell.
Mike, as part of your audit, do you look at the strategies that go with it?
Yes, we do. Yep. So our starting point is to look at the various strategies, whether they be financial, infrastructure, etc. You know, because they really underpin, I guess, the financial forecasts that sit alongside them. So, you know, we look at those strategies both in relation to, you know, the completeness and the content of those strategies, and we look at them in the context of the financial forecasts associated with those strategies as well. So, yes, we do.
Thank you, Councillor. Any further questions? Appear to be none. I will look for a mover. Are we comfortable dealing with all the recommendations together? Yep, I'll look for a mover that the council approves the long-term plan 2025-2034 consultation document for public consultation, approves the significance and engagement policy up for public consultation, approves the following supporting documents, notes that the rating review is postponed, and delegates authority of the Chief Executive to make any final editorial amendments. Just looking for a mover. Councillor Phillips, seconded by Councillor Richard McPhail. Now the floor is open for debate. Councillor Stringer.
Through your worship, and I realise this is probably something that has been brought up in workshops or may have been. I know in query to the public, it's about what the questions we're asking them. Can the public suggest ideas that we may not have thought of? 12,000 people out there could put something else in that we may not realise, but just I know we're very specific on what we are asking.
Question, not debate, but I'll allow. Did you want to answer that one, Deb?
Yes, we don't tell people what they can and can't submit on. So yeah, we of course will take submissions on any topic, including topics that are not within the current document.
Thank you, Councillor. Any debate? Councillor McDonnell.
Yeah, I have a point to make here, and just I've got something written out here. The auditors have had a considerable influence on the wording of the document, to the extent that the document now states that the council's preferred option is not to sell assets, but it is my preferred option to sell assets underutilised or redundant. We're currently sitting on a lot of assets: the golf driving range, Matai Ridge, which we are trying to sell. But there are several other sections in Gore and Matara that could go on the market, plus the Pride land that we bought to take the water line down to the new cycle bridge that's now off the agenda and we're going under the river. We've got the Gore airport, plus several other reserve blocks of land to be sold over time, the Preston Street tennis courts, which are reserve land, and the camping ground, which again is reserve land, and playgrounds we could reduce in size. Selling assets has many beneficial effects for the council. It creates cash to repay this huge debt of 60 million we're sitting on. Capital repayments also reduce the interest cost. Sale of land to residents allows us to charge them rates, which gives us more income. The council has no maintenance costs and less staff time. A simple example, if an asset was sold today for $1 million and we are paying a loan off over 40 years, and that $1 million would last right to the end, it would save us $2 million in interest and $1 million in principal payments. On page 147 of this agenda, one of the big risks stated is the inability of council to repay debt. If we do not increase rates to a level where the surpluses and the depreciation allows us to have enough money to repay debt. To achieve this, we're certainly going to have to increase rates even higher if we don't sell assets. The council's assets are evaluated from time to time. Each time the charge for depreciation gets higher and we collect more money for repairs and renewals. This all comes out of the ratepayers' pockets. The asset sale is one way of reducing the impact on the poor residents of Gore and Mataura and the district. I think that's my...
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor McKenzie.
I pretty much agree with what Stuart's saying, but we don't want to have a fire sale either. We need to get the best dollars that we can for assets if we're going to sell them, but I do agree in principle with what Stuart's saying. Thank you.
Thank you, councillors. The time to debate these issues will be the opposite end of the consultation document, but I appreciate that you're just clearing that up for the public. Just to point out on page 22 of the consultation document, it does say, for this document we have used the word preferred to indicate the option that we've used to do a financial modelling only, just to add a bit of clarity there. Councillor Hovell.
Thank you, Your Worship. We could all sit here, or I could sit here today with some platitudes about we've done our best and the rest of it, and it doesn't really matter because the perception that the public have is on some key issues in the way that the council has performed over time, the structure of the council, etc., etc. So I'm not going to add to that discussion other than to say this is the stage where the public need to be making some positive contributions as to the way that we operate. It's all well and good to say the council has too many staff, the council is spending too much money on cars and the rest of it. The bottom line is, though, that that simply isn't the fact. I'm not going to add to the discussion. I'm looking forward to what we actually receive, and at that time, I think that's the time to actually debate the issues in more depth rather than today. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Fraser.
Thank you, Your Worship. And Councillor Hovell has actually just said the same thing that I wish to say, is that this is the amount of time, and firstly I want to thank Debbie and her team for the amount of work that they've put in such short notice to get this presented and ready for the public to have a look at. Reading back through it, I just thought at the time that I've spent, which would only be a minute amount of what has been spent here by the council, and the members of the public do not understand or realise that. We have a lot of legislative responsibilities that we have to adhere to, and we have no choice. This is our ratepayers and the voters of Gore, the people of Gore's opportunity to tell us, not cut spending, not wasteful spending, not perks. If you're going to say stop perks, please actually tell me what they are, because I must have missed that email. I want people in this Gore area to tell us, and as what Councillor Stringer said before, if you have an idea, present it. We are here to listen. We have had an upturn in staff abuse in this place, which is unacceptable. I wish I hadn't read some recent Facebook comments. Some people need to take a long and hard look at themselves. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Any further comments? Councillor Gardine.
Yeah, I've lived through 3 of these long-term plans, and it's quite interesting to hear the initial response and where we're going for the first 2 or 3 years, and then not quite end up where we wanted to land at the end of 10 years. And I'd like to think that we can follow through on this plan and try to get our debt under control by the end of the 10 years. And it will involve capital sales of items that we don't need and we don't use anymore, and that can be repurposed in the private sector. But we do have some big challenges in that 10 years, and that's the three waters, where it goes and does all the debt go with it, and what is it going to imply for our ratepayers. It'll be another bill in the mail. And we have to look carefully at where we spend our money, and we look carefully at how far we will let that debt run on. And we need, as Stuart said, we can sell some assets and it'll make a huge difference to the end of the 10 years. And we need to concentrate on that, and I'd like to hear from the public any of their ideas too on what we can do to be a more efficient council.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Reid.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just tapping off on all of these comments, am I correct, and I know I saw it in here, that 90% of our expenditure as a council is actually legislated for?
88, but pretty close.
Yeah, so the public actually needs to realise that we only have a 10% headroom here, so there hasn't been any willy-nilly spending.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Paul McPhail.
Thank you, through the chair. We have to be aware as councillors how much hurt there is in the community. People are coming to me about businesses all the time. There's a lot of hurt out there. There's no money. So we've got to be aware of every single dollar we spend, whether we have to sell the family jewels or whatever we have to do. We've got to do our best, and I'm looking forward to hearing what the public say.
Thank you, Councillor. Don't have to speak, Councillor Phillips.
Thank you, Worship. No, look, I'm in agreement with most of the councillors around the table, and I'd just like to thank Debbie especially for leading the staff on an exercise that was probably sleepless and very exhausting, and I'd just like to congratulate her and her staff on the job that they've done so far. To the councillors, yes, we've got a big job ahead of us in the next 10 years to make sure that, or me or other councillors, to make sure that we're spending our money wisely for the ratepayer. I think we've finally come to the point where we've made a decision about over the line is not enough now, and we've got to sit down and say, righto, we've done enough. Let's sit back, make sure that we're spending our money wisely, make sure that we're spending our money repaying debt, make sure that we get the best money that we possibly can for the Three Waters, the team that involved in that, and also to start lobbying central government to stop telling us that we need to do this, we need to do that. Holy heck, where does it stop with central government? You know, they've got to start saying that, okay, we're the ones that are killing the local government, we're the ones that are killing our poor ratepayers and financially, because we're the ones that are putting down, as you say, 88% of expenditure. You know, if they could stop doing that, we'd be as good as gold.
Thanks, Councillor. Councillor Rich McPhail, last up.
Yes, thank you, Worship. As an elected member, we don't really get to choose what comes before us on an agenda or a triennium or a year. So the long-term plan comes to us and we have to obviously go through process. I think the other councillors have covered it off. We're in part of the process here. The important thing is the fact that there is a submission process. I agree with the other councillors talking about assets and sales. It's all there, it's been discussed, it's been workshopped. There's been hours and hours and hours spent within the council looking at our operational budgets, our deficits, our maintenance, where we could cut or where we can't cut. So the options are tabled out in this LTP. I think it's time that the maybe a majority that's slightly silent should actually come forward and start talking about what they want in this community. and maybe a minority that's very, very loud actually look at being positive or give us some proactive information around how we can proceed forward with this. We've got a legislative requirement here. It's a process. We're at that business end of that. So let's just get into it and see what comes back to us. I don't think there's any point in debating what submissions or matters are still floating there. So, and I agree the council has put a lot of work into this, the council staff. We've had obviously a senior leadership that's changed, and there's been some coming and going, and really grabbed it, done some excellent work to get this before us today. So I say to the community, look at it, read it in its entirety, and give us some good feedback on what you want to see. Not just a small section, the whole lot. Take the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Any more bites of the cherry before I kind of try and pull this all together? I think there's been some really good thoughts around the table. You sure can, Councillor. Go for it.
I'd just like to string along with what Richard's saying. I think one of the most important things is clarity of getting the message out there, what options are. And because I've had people, as Paul mentioned before, come to you and say they see a little number and they see a big number and they just don't read the rest of it. And they just go, oh, throwing their hands up in the air. But I say to folks, have you read the whole thing? Oh. They just see the numbers and don't get what the options are in this consultation document. So I'd just like to, I know we're doing our best to make it clear, but I think before people go off on a tangent, they really do need to read through it and get the information in here. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I think that brings it nicely to a natural conclusion, unless there's anyone else. No, that's cool. I just want to touch really quickly on something that Councillor Phillips brought up, which is the government mandates that come towards us. And we are working hard to push back on ones that are completely unrealistic. It's only, what was it, last council meeting that, you know, we can celebrate success of that $13 million that hopefully we won't have to spend on the Matoda wastewater treatment plants anymore. So there is some really active work being done to take some of those big items away. Bits and pieces are being taken out of our toolkit. For instance, we have been underfunding our waters assets by 30%. We thought water was going to be taken off us. That hasn't been the case. That's fine. But now we have to fully fund those by 2028. So we have no option to kick that can down the road anymore. Same thing with recycling. We've deferred and deferred and deferred that. That's now taken out of our toolkit as well. So these are the sorts of pressures that we're having to deal with. Lastly, and I think it's been raised here really, really well, submit. We're here to listen, and this is an LTP. We have a few more tools in the toolkit to be able to make some different changes. So Monday, 7th of April, that is next Monday, we'll be at the Matoda Community Centre. On Tuesday, we'll be at the Waikaka Hall. On the following Monday, we will be next door at the James Cummings Centre, and then Matoda Marae on the 16th of April. So please, if you have any questions, please come along, talk to the team, talk to councillors, try and understand the situation we're in, and help us all make these decisions together. And lastly, to put too fine a point on it, please submit even if you're in support of something as well. Don't just think because it's there at the moment that it will continue to be there. I'm specifically talking about events. I'm sure we will get lots of submissions about getting rid of events, but if you love our events in town, want them to continue, then please submit on that as well, because we need to hear both sides of the story. So if there are no further comments, I will put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye, and against. The motion is carried. Thank you, councillors. And thank you, Mike. Next up, I believe we have the roading bylaw. Let me find the page. On page 183, you can see councillors furiously scrolling. They don't have that. Give me a look when we're there, councillors. Thumbs up from Bronwyn, thank you.
The system will be changing. We'll be able to go straight to it with the next system. Yeah, yeah. Soon.
Like to welcome Jason up. Welcome. And did you want to add anything to this report?
Thank you, through your worship. Just quickly highlight a couple of key parts around the bylaw. So the bylaw is a critical document for the council. It helps to outline some of the important work that needs to be done and managed through our traffic corridors across the district. What the purpose of the bylaw you have in front of you is really about simplifying that document. The management of the document of our roads is effectively staying the same. What we're trying to, this is a pretty old document that needs brought sort of into the new era, and we have undertaken a good review of that and tried to just really simplify that down. One of the key changes being proposed to this document is a flexible resolution approach to managing some of the issues, whether that be things like parking. One of the challenges with bylaws is a very legislative process around amendments and reviews, and so what councils around the country are doing through the Land Transport Act, which this bylaw is governed by, is to allow resolutions of council to make changes by rewording this, and this is something that's happening quite commonly now across the country. So that means that we can set changes to parking, for example, without having to go through a whole bylaw amendment, and where that might be an example of that might be including if we're doing a bit of work in a roading corridor that's going to take some time and it takes out a whole lot of parks, that allows us to then provide provision for parks somewhere else by going through a resolution of council process that can address that issue and allow for parking to be then altered or moved to a different place. And so that's really an example of what we're trying to create through this bylaw process. Rest of it's sort of contained in the report, and so happy to take any questions.
Thank you for that, Jason. Questions from the floor? Councillor Stringer.
Through your worship. Jason, correct me if I'm wrong, I haven't seen anywhere in here, but do we have the ability to levy or charge the likes of forestry trucks that are operating outside our region but coming through? I know if they are in our region we have the ability, but if they're passing through, do we have that, or is that something we can put into the bylaw?
Through your worship. So that is more an issue that's probably dealt with through the district plan changes rather than this bylaw.
Probably just further to that, councillor, my understanding from government is that the whole system's going to be upended within the next 5 to 10 years and changed to RUC, so road user charges. With EVs and hybrids and things, it's pretty hard to determine. Fuel tax is almost past its use by date, so that will also come into effect as well. Any further? Councillor Reid?
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm just looking at number 4, and it's regarding heavy motor vehicles travelling in urban areas. I'm just wondering, with Jason, I guess, it's great to think that we might be able to slow some of that heavy traffic down, but how on earth do we police it?
Through your worship. So I have had some experience with introducing some restrictions on heavy vehicles in residential areas in Central Otago. And so basically it does require, or the resolution process that Jason was talking about before, will allow the council to resolve to designate certain streets or certain areas in the townships as areas that certain classes of heavy vehicles can't use or park in unless they have legitimate business, if they're delivering something or picking up something from. So the way that will be introduced, we'll need to put in signs advising traffic or heavy traffic or the classes of traffic we're wanting to prohibit of the fact that they can't go into those areas. So you may have seen these signs in Clyde and Cromwell over the last few years. So a lot of Clyde Township and Cromwell Township heavy commercial vehicles can't use a lot of the roads there, and there's quite large signs advising drivers of that requirement. And so we'll need to cover all of the potential entrances into those either individual streets or those areas.
Thank you, Murray. Does that also include tractors, rural vehicles? There's a lot of tractors travel down my street.
Through your worship, the wording of the bylaw is allows the council to resolve to restrict or prohibit classes of vehicles. It doesn't actually say specify exactly which classes on which roads. So I think at that time of the council making a resolution to that effect, that is likely to be able to provide that ability.
Councillor Fraser and then Councillor Val.
Just to continue on from that, it's not weight, it's class. Because you could have a tractor and a machine gun down the road that could be 25 tonne, 30 tonne, and you could have, but a truck that weighs it, say, only 15 is unpermitted, but the tractor and that piece of machinery is.
Through your worship, yeah, from memory, the wording in the bylaw allows for both. So, for instance, in Clyde, they have a weight restriction and I think a class restriction as well, from memory. So it's gives you pretty good coverage to target the vehicles that you don't want in those areas.
Sorry, just through your worship, look, I think it's important that we understand sort of just going back to the process here, the detail will be provided and be publicly available on exactly where we land with that, and councils will have the opportunity to workshop it. What we wanted to do is get the bylaw provisions in place, and we can then certainly dive into the detail, and that will be available for comment by the public too before we then adopt the bylaw. I think in June is when it's provided. So there will be the opportunity still for feedback from the public on the provisions and for councillors to input into that before they go out in terms of the detail for those resolutions.
Thank you, Jason. Councillor Val.
And the detail in documents like this is far more fun than the actual reading of the documents themselves, but it does highlight, I think, where we sit in terms of the issues. And to go back to Councillor Stringer's question about the logging vehicles, and basically in some months vehicles come from Clutha and take a shortcut to get through to State Highway 1, and they're causing considerable damage to the roads. Unfortunately, the district plan isn't the mechanism that controls that, but the discussion you've just had about controlling the weight of vehicles, the class and weight of vehicles, I understood that was the mechanism whereby we can actually manage the routes that are taken by the logging trucks that I'm talking about.
Thank you, Councillor. Any further questions? Do you have one? No, you're right. Councillor Stringer.
I've got a curiosity one here, Your Worship. We've got here on page 231 that we can charge a fee for roadside grazing. How much are we collecting from roadside grazing?
Through your worship, yes, the charging of fees has always been in the, was in the previous bylaw as well. We've only just recently introduced fees for a number of those permitted activities. So at this stage, there hasn't been any charging of fees yet, but any new grazing permits that are issued are likely to incur those fees.
Further to that, so cut and carry is permitted activity off the side of the road?
So, sorry, I missed that.
It's in cut and carry, as in if I mow the roadside and then have a wagon come along and collect the grass and then take it to my property instead of the animals on the roadside, is a permitted activity and non-chargeable.
Through your worship, so that's probably comes under a different area in the bylaw. From memory, that would come under potentially cultivation of the roadside.
Sorry, I'll cut you off there, mate. We can get into it. We can go into the detail, as Jason said before, as once the bylaw's out there for consultation and editation by councillors. Councillor McPhail, did you have another cheeky comment?
No, just your worship, I was just going to spar with the fellow councillor regarding the fact that some beautification is done on some of our roads with grazing from some very well managed stock. So there may be some farmers and some people within that sector that would take a bit of umbrage to the fact that they're actually assisting with the beautification of the gore surrounding areas, and ably feeding their stock and getting their daily intake. So that's all I'd like to add, your worship.
Thank you, councillor. Any further questions? Appear to be none. So I will look for a mover to receive the statement of proposal for consultation, determine that the decision to develop a bylaw is significant, determine that it is compiled with the direction-making provisions of the Local Government Act, determine, pursuant to Section 115 of the Local Government Act 2002, that the bylaw is the most appropriate way of addressing the roading network safety and efficiency, determine that the draft roading bylaw is the most appropriate form of the bylaw, determine Section 155, that the roading bylaw does not give rise to any implications under the New Zealand Bill of Rights Act, and note that it will be reconsidered after the consultative process and before the bylaw is finally adopted by council. My gosh. And approve the adoption of the statement of proposal in the draft Gore District Council Roading Bylaw 2025 for the purposes of public consultation in accordance with sections 83 and 86 of the Local Government Act 2002. Do we get all that? Councillor Reid moves, seconded by Councillor Fraser, and now we are open for debate. Did have it a little bit beforehand, but just giving people another bite of the cherry. All happy? I will put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. And against? The motion is carried. Thank you very much, councillors. I didn't mention it before, but consultation is now open and will close on the 2nd of May. So get your submissions in before the 2nd of May on the long-term plan. Have a good evening, everyone.